And welcome everyone. That is such an abrupt ending to that video. It really does throw me. Welcome everyone to our third installment of the Digital Future series. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Internet of Things. So you will see that we've got lots of names up on the screen there. So I am Niall Ridgway. I am currently with Tablet Academy Scotland. You'll see me in the first event, but I was hanging around in the background, similar to what Lara and Jenny are doing today. So they are actually on this stream, but they are in the background. So if you're wanting to say hi to them, you can do from our YouTube chat, and you can leave comments there. Throughout today's session, if you do have any questions, please do pop your questions into the chat, and we'll get back to you as we go on. Or if you want to follow us on Twitter or Instagram or wherever you find us, you're going to find us all at the Tablet Academy SC. You'll find Microsoft and Lara at Microsoft EDU and Jenny at DigiLearn Scott. So we've also got somebody else here. So you'll see on the right-hand side, we have Andrew Wigfield's name. So Andrew is our special guest for today. Give us a wave, Andrew. It's good to see you. We were having a wee chat beforehand, so I am really excited to get started with today and hear what Andrew has to say. So I'm going to pull my screen down just now, and I'm going to hand over to Andrew, who's going to talk all about kind of his life with the Internet of Things. And yeah, I'm really excited for today's session. So Andrew, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Niall. So yes, Andrew Wigfield. I work at Microsoft, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about my background and how I got to where I am at Microsoft, a little bit about the Internet of Things, or IoT. And if we have time, just a little bit about what it's like to work at Microsoft. So I've been at Microsoft about 12 years. I've always had a background in sales and marketing in the technology and telecom sector. So always working with large companies, selling technology solutions into large corporates. Much of my career has been working on a global and EMEA, so European basis. I took French at school and at university, so I really enjoy that sort of cultural difference and mix that the role brings when you work on a global basis. So I spend my days in my role at the moment talking to Norwegians and Italians and Germans and French, plus Americans, of course, because Microsoft is an American company. So I am a sales specialist for IoT at Microsoft. So exactly what does that mean? So I work with large organizations, large manufacturers, utilities, energy providers, transport companies, trying to make their processes and their products more efficient, more sustainable, driving insights into maybe some industrial process, understanding how they work and making them more efficient. And that's the fundamentals of what the Internet of Things mean. When we start looking at the Internet of Things from a consumer perspective, that might be if you have an Alexa at home. That's a connected device. That's an IoT device in the home. If you have a Fitbit or a sports watch or something like that, that is registering data information from you in terms of heartbeat and other metrics on your run, for example, that can be classed as an IoT device. Where the Alexa, for example, is going in the home is all around smart home technology, and so that can be classed as an IoT environment. Where I work in Microsoft is more on the industrial side, or more on the corporate side. So where we might look at smart home scenarios, we look at smart buildings, office buildings, for example, and production plants and warehousing. So some of my scenarios, for example, on the IoT side, I'm working with a large ferry boat manufacturer, ship manufacturer, working towards autonomous shipping, for example, where we need a ton of data coming off various aspects of that ship in terms of navigation, in terms of speed, location of other boats, weather systems, for example. So where Microsoft really gets involved is the interpretation, the ingesting of that data from those ships, and really trying to make sense of that data. And I believe other talks that you've got from Microsoft are around big data and AI. And so this data coming from ships and vessels, could be cargo ships transporting goods around the world, or it could be cruise ships, for example, with people on. Where does that data go, and how do we make sense of it? And that's where artificial intelligence and big data come in, that you'll be hearing about later. So the conversations that I have with my customers in the manufacturing sector, in the energy sector, in shipping as well, really go towards some of the big challenges that we've got around the world at the moment. So climate change, for example, working with energy companies and utilities, really understanding the state of their infrastructure today. If we are to understand where companies can improve their sustainability metrics, their impact on climate, we really have to understand what their facilities are doing today. And so getting that data from an Internet of Thing environment, from little sensors, little digital sensors inside a wind farm, for example, or an energy plant or a manufacturing process, bringing that data out, interpreting it in large computing cloud environments that Microsoft own, really allows manufacturers and energy providers to understand the condition of their environments today. And then the whole reason why we do that is to try and then improve efficiency, environmental metrics, for example. So a real life case at the moment is working with a UK utility on a wind farm. They are building a wind farm up in Scotland, where we are trying to understand, we've got sensors inside those wind turbines, really understanding the condition of those turbines, the condition monitoring of those turbines. So we can put sensors in that hardware, in that turbine, to really understand what the motor is doing, what the gearing is doing, what the ball bearings are doing inside of that turbine, and understanding how that turbine will perform. Equally, we can understand what that entire wind farm is doing. So a multiple number of turbines. We can start understanding the whole unit of that farm as well, and overlaying other data into the condition monitoring of those turbines. So we can input weather data, for example. We can input how the engineer from that utility company is going to service those turbines, and what sort of timescales that engineer will need to have, for example. So it's not just about the devices that the company own. It's also about third-party information and data that influence the condition of their devices, of their processes. So, for example, going back to the shipping company, it was weather systems in there, it was other ships around them, it was sea conditions, for example. For a turbine utility, it's weather systems again as well. It's the influence of people in that wind farm. When we look at manufacturers, for example, I'm working with a large manufacturer that makes soap. Soap takes a huge amount of water in that manufacturing process, for example. So how do we manage the water resource as part of that manufacturing process as best we can, and how can we reuse that water in other aspects, other parts of a factory? And so we've really worked with that manufacturer, that company, to reduce the amount of water that they have as a whole inside their factories, and really improving their environmental footprint. So that's what IoT effectively is. It's measuring devices, getting the data, getting the information out of devices, and then making sense of it through data science, for example, asking that data questions on how we can improve that facility, that process. And when we look at the partner, the ecosystem around an IoT scenario, when we look at that technology footprint on an IoT scenario, it's not just Microsoft that exists in that process. We need sensor providers, and they can be tiny bits of hardware with communication capabilities, and they can be measuring humidity or moisture levels, for example, in a farming environment. So farmers now have little moisture sensors around their field so that they can measure the health and quality of their crops. So that little sensor has to measure certain things like vibration in a turbine, moisture in the soil, dust, etc. And so we need hardware engineers to do that. Then it comes into, then it needs a communication process to bring that into a Microsoft sphere in terms of the cloud. And so we need the capability of Microsoft engineers, software engineers, for example, to interpret that on behalf of the company. Equally, the company is looking at how they can understand the data as well. And then we need people to put all this together, because again, Microsoft doesn't screw in the sensors and attach mobile masts, for example, to get the data from the field, from the vessel, for example. So we need people to integrate this solution as well. So there's a number of different capabilities and partners and organizations that really have to come together to make this, to find a solution for this problem. And so when I look at the capabilities that I need, although I work for Microsoft, I am not technical. I'm in a sales role, and so I need to be able to organize people. I need to be able to influence people. I really need to problem solve and really understand what the problem of customers is. And so there's a lot of understanding and empathy and cultural understanding as well. Certainly if we are working across geographies as well. And so all of these soft skills are really, really important in the job that I do. I'd like to move on very quickly, if I can, in terms of what it's like to work for Microsoft and the culture of organizations. And Microsoft, the reason why I've been here 12 years is that I really enjoy working at Microsoft. It's a really challenging environment and a really meaningful environment. And actually culture of Microsoft is really, really important. And we talk about it regularly as an organization. And there are a few headlines in terms of what that culture means. We have a growth mindset. We work on trust. We really focus down on diversity and inclusion. And we spend our days internally within Microsoft talking about these issues. So from a growth mindset perspective, we have this concept of learn it all, not know it all. So we really walk into a customer environment asking as many questions and trying to understand the breadth and depth of the problems that they have. From a diversity and inclusion perspective, not only is Microsoft hiring a vast array of backgrounds, it's an active conversation within Microsoft, but it also allows you to approach a problem in a very, very open and honest way. And it allows you to really go and ask lots of different questions of lots of different people. And it also allows you a voice within Microsoft. And so it's not just about those who are confident with a loud voice and who are always speaking up. You're actively looking for those quieter people who have lots of ideas, but who might just want some time to articulate what they're thinking. And so that diversity and inclusion aspect of our culture is really important. And finally, I want to focus down on trust as well. Trust between ourselves, those people who work inside Microsoft, trust with our customers as well, people to people, but it's also in the products that we build. If, as you can see, that more and more of society will be driven by connectivity and by technology, people need to be able to trust in the technology that is driving that. Will it keep them safe and secure? Will it keep them accessible? Will it be actually in my interests? Going back to that diversity and inclusion, the products that our customers and our partners build on top of Microsoft technology, is it inclusive of everyone? Which means that you need a large, diverse body of people in order to build those solutions. And so there's lots of conversations inside Microsoft in terms of how do we make our technology as open and as inclusive as possible, and how do we build that technology to help our customers as much as possible. So I think I am done. I'm just looking through the chat. If there's any questions that I can address right now, I'd love to. I'd love to have some questions. Otherwise, Niall, are you there?
Hello. Yes. I just checked my mic's on. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. I mean, while I was watching you there, I mean, I'm enthralled. I don't know if you can see in that private chat, I've been singing your praises there, saying things like, yeah, I'm loving the inclusivity point there towards the end. I think I try to kind of include that in every thought that I have, especially when I'm putting something out. Is this inclusive to as many people as possible, if not everyone? And I'm glad to hear that's kind of part of your process as well. While I was listening to you, I wrote down some questions. So if there aren't any coming in the comments, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but I've got a few that I'd written down. So where would people get started if they were interested in Internet of Things? So I know a lot of schools are interested in kind of bringing in smart technology, bringing in data into their worlds. Do you have any recommendations on where they could get started or start to kind of look at?
So you know what, YouTube is a fantastic resource. There are boatloads of courses and little technology briefs that you can find on YouTube. And I think it's great that schools are getting involved in that. If you've got a little patch of ground that you can grow some vegetables on, yeah, stick a sensor in and connect it up to a PC. It's not that easy, as I say from a non-technologist. So hands up. But that's a relatively straightforward thing to do. And in terms of you can start measuring things around your school as well in terms of temperature and people movement, for example. So I would say that YouTube is probably your best bet to start with. Equally, Microsoft have got loads of resources online to and GitHub as well. If you've come across GitHub, that's very much for a technologist, but there's loads of resources in something called GitHub as well.
Nice one. Oh, yeah, great answers there. And I mean, we'll be, like you said, with Microsoft, we'll be linking in with the Explore Digital Future, so we'll be talking more about that later on. I've got a few more here just to just to keep it going. So you mentioned that you've been looking at soap and farming with the kind of using the Internet of Things. What's been your most shocking item or kind of area that you didn't expect to be so data heavy and data driven that you've maybe worked with?
I think that soap environment is actually a really good example, because soap is soap is soap.
Yeah.
And nobody really thinks about how it's made. But when you dive into that that manufacturing process, there's lots of really moments, and it's not fascinating, but it is quite interesting just how it goes from all those raw materials to a bar of soap, and the process that the organization has to go through to get it from raw material onto a shelf of a supermarket, and actually how much impact a new process, a new way of thinking, take technology out of it. And actually Microsoft, it's not about the technology, it's about how can we make this better, how can we make it more environmentally friendly, and how can we make it more efficient. So it is about business problems, it's not about the technology. But you look at something as simple as a bar of soap and you think, wow, you can make so many improvements of that on that.
Yeah, I mean, if I had a bingo card of things that I thought you would say today, soap was not was not on there.
And equally, the complexity of a ship, getting a ship around the world,
Yeah.
the number of containers that fall into the sea. The reason why your TV hasn't turned up is because it's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, for example. So not only keeping the containers on the ship and recording how many containers that you've got, but if you are going to build an autonomous ship, and again, reduce the amount of fuel that it takes, take advantage of weather systems, etc., etc., the complexity of that, the number of people and different organizations and expertise that needs to come together in order to solve that really complex problem is fascinating.
Yeah.
And there's a whole load of regulation around that as well. So you have to work within governmental controls and industry controls as well. So it's a really interesting problem to solve.
Absolutely. No, I think you've said it all very well there. Are you able to, I'm going to show something on the screen. Are you able to see this question that's just come in? Or
Yes, just joining.
Yes, you are. Fantastic. So Pam has just asked, just joining this, but would Raspberry Pi be a good device for external sensor controls, or another device you'd recommend? So have you used Raspberry Pi much, or is there another device that you would recommend?
So thank you, Pam, for the question. So as we start building IoT scenarios, we would build a little test lab and we would use a Raspberry Pi. But as we would scale that out, certainly in an industrial environment, we need something a little bit more robust than a Raspberry Pi. And there's a load of platforms out there. When you say an external sensor control, Pam, Raspberry Pis are not waterproof. So you'd have to stick it in a water, if it is outside, in, for example, a garden or stuck on the wall of a school, for example, it would need to be in a waterproof container. But in terms of in terms of its capability of being a sensor, absolutely, you just have to keep it dry.
Great. That's a great tip there for people, because I know I would just be sticking it in the plant pot. and then panicking.
I don't recommend that. I don't recommend that.
Fantastic. Well, I've just got one last question for you, and then I'll let you go and get on with your day. So, what's been your favourite project that you've worked on when linking into kind of the Internet of Things and using devices? Has it been the soap, or is there something else that you've kind of thought I've really enjoyed kind of getting into this? Maybe it's the farms, maybe it's the wind turbines. You know, what's been your favourite project you've worked on?
So there's a number. I mean, I could talk about robotics in a car manufacturing plant because I love cars, and robots are brilliant, are really cool. The turbine one, the wind turbine one, is really interesting. It's interesting through the advancement of technology and the capability that Microsoft is bringing to that. So we now have the ability as Microsoft to build that wind farm in a virtual world. Think of a sort of Minecraft for wind farms, and so we can throw weather systems at the virtual version. We can break things. We can do all sorts of things to the virtual world to test it on how it would perform in the physical world, for example. So we can do that. We can do that in a virtual environment, in a IT environment, and we can do that for smart buildings, for example. We can test how children move around a school, for example, and see what the impact on the heating systems of a school is. And we can build that school in a virtual environment and test the hell out of it, basically, and throw all sorts of scenarios at it. So that's been really interesting. But there's been the ship scenario equally, again, because of its complexity. And you just don't know what you don't know. You keep asking these stupid questions, and you just learn a little bit more and a little bit more about it. So it's I am incredibly privileged to have the meetings that I do, and I am often the most stupid person in the room. I have PhD in robotic people sat over there. I have 35-year experience in manufacturing processes sat there, and there's little me who are going, how can I help?
Well, that's how I feel now, listening to everything you've been chatting about. Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely amazed with everything that you've brought to this chat today. So I'm really grateful to have you in today and to have this conversation and just kind of learn a wee bit more about yourself and about the role that you play in making the world a better place. So thank you very much for that.
Super. Thank you for having me.
Cheers, no problem at all. If anyone does have any questions for Andrew, pop them into the chat and we'll ping them on to him and we'll let him get on with his day now. So thank you for joining us and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So yeah, thank you, Andrew. I really enjoyed that. I thought that was fantastic. And what a very interesting person. And yeah, thank you. I can still see Andrew down at the bottom, so I can see you smiling away there. So let's jump into our Discover the Digital Futures Internet of Things. It's just going to take me 2 seconds to ping my screens around a wee bit. So if you just give me a second, I'm just going to start sharing this one. Okay. Double check that's working. Yes. Okay. So welcome everyone. As we said at the start, we're going to be covering the Internet of Things for our Digital Future series. I am Niall Ridgway. I'm with Tablet Academy Scotland. We've had Andrew Wakefield on kicking us off this morning as our special guest. Down in the back end of today's session, working all the comments, we've got Lara and we've got Jenny as well. So if you do have any questions for them, they will be in the comments and answering anything that you've got. So we are going to be taking a look today at the Internet of Things. We're going to be exploring it, we're going to be practicing it, and then we're going to be applying it. So the experience and outcomes that I've not changed that top line there. Discover today's tech should say Internet of Things. So we are going to be tackling loads of different experiences and outcomes across the 3rd level, mostly in this scenario, but also across the 4th level. Now, there's nothing stopping you from taking this learning to your late kind of primary school aged pupils and just kind of changing the questions. You could even go all the way down to your early years. Just change the questions to suit kind of their knowledge base. But the experiences and outcomes that Microsoft offers and the links to the Scottish curriculum are mostly here based in the 3rd and 4th levels. What I've done is I've taken those technology benchmarks, and just from these ones here, and I have put them together in a PDF. So if you give me 2 seconds, let's come out of there, and we're going to open up, this. There we go. This website, it closed down to the bottom, and I've taken those benchmarks and I have boxed around the ease and O's that it mentions and that Microsoft kind of recommends that the curriculum links for the Internet of Things. So we've got things like cyber resilience and internet safety. I can keep myself safe and secure in online environments. And here on the right, we've got our benchmarks. Now, I don't need to tell educators how to use the benchmarks. You've used them pretty much every week, every day of your lives, gathering kind of what your students are going to need to support their education and their learning. But if you are interested in having a wee look at this document, feel free to message me on Twitter or pop it in the comments, and I'm more than happy to share this PDF out. All I've done is I've taken the relevant benchmarks and I've put a box around the ones that link to the Internet of Things. We've got things there. I understand how scientific and technological developments have contributed to changes in everyday products, with the benchmark being discusses advantages and disadvantages of using technologies in everyday life. So these go all the way down from 3rd level into 4th level as well. So I can select and use digital technologies to access, select relevant information and solve real world problems. Like Andrew said, we can take that data and we can apply that to our learning. So you can demonstrate an understanding of how digital literacy will impact on future learning and career pathways. And who knows, you might end up in a kind of job or role similar to Andrew's or ours here, working with Tablet Academy Scotland, Education Scotland and Microsoft as well. So yeah, there we go. So that is all of the benchmarks that link in with the Internet of Things modules on our Discover the Digital Future. So as I scroll down, you can find it quite easily by typing into Bing, Discover the Digital Futures, Microsoft, and you can find it in there. And then all I've done on the top line is go across to Internet of Things. When you click on there, excuse me, that is when you get access to all of the free lessons for your pupils to kind of take charge of. So we've got Explore, Practice, and then Apply. And then once you've done, you've got my favorite part, well, one of my favorite parts, which is the certificate. So if we start off with Explore, our outcomes are we're going to understand basic Internet of Things concepts. We've got identify everyday examples of the Internet of Things. We can consider why the sharing of information between devices is important. And lastly, we can explore the impact of Internet of Things. Now we've got our timings there underneath, but that is not all. On the right-hand side, oh, my camera's flipped here. On the right-hand side, you will notice that we have our downloads. So we've got our Educator guide and we also have our student slides. So when I click on the Educator guide, it's going to show us everything that you're going to need for your lesson. So I can either click on these headings down here and it's going to take me to the different parts of my, my lesson as an educator, or I can just scroll down and work through it with my students. You'll see on the left, we've got our student slides numbers to take note of. So if your students are using the slides as well, they'll be on slides 1 and 2, whilst you are on this one here. So our big question here, what is the connection between an oyster and the internet? Before studying all this and getting my head into Internet of Things, I could not have told you. I would have had absolutely no idea. But here we have kind of the big question. So explain that the Internet of Things refers to a system of interrelated internet-connected objects that are able to collect and transfer data over a wireless network without human interaction. The video below explains that the Internet allows us to measure salinity, temperature, and water depth in oyster estuaries, linking the internet and oysters in an unexpected way. So that links again into what Andrew was saying about the soap, about the farming, about the wind farms, that all of these things that you would not consider to be connected by the internet are using that every second to kind of harvest that data and to kind of share that for our future world. Like I said, we have all of our educator slides here. So all you have to do is go through them with all of your students. But if I go back a page, here we have our student slides. So this is what it looks like for the students. So we've got our kind of big question here. What is the link between an Oyster and the internet? And we've got a wee graphic just to kind of get them thinking. I like that in this one, they've got things like the wind speed and they've got air pressure. They're already starting to get our students to consider what the possibilities might be. They might start thinking an Oyster might be playing a PS5 or something like that, or an Xbox, but we've got our kind of learning markers here: air pressure, wind speed. What is the data that we're going to take from our Oysters? Of course, they're not going to be playing a games console. We've then got our description of what the Internet of Things is. The Internet of Things refers to a system of interrelated, internet-connected objects. So we've already covered that there. And down here, we've got all of our videos. So you can easily just share these out with your students. They can work through all of these lesson slides either at their own pace or at a guided pace. Again, this links into the asynchronous learning that's been taken on for the past couple of years. We've all had to adapt to these scenarios, working kind of in that asynchronous environment. This is a brilliant way for you to support all of your students, whether they kind of take that on their own, get started, maybe they watch the videos in their own time and come back to the lesson. It's up to you how you run this, but we do have the teacher slides and we've got the student lessons slides as well. As we come down, here we go. And we've also got our supplementary learning down at the bottom. So if your students are wanting to take that learning, that next step further, they can go for the kind of the foundations. So getting started, intermediate, you can start looking at farm beats for students, which is great fun. Go and check that out. And we've also got our advanced level looking at our Internet of Things as well. I'm going to head back now. So that is kind of exploding IoT. So we're getting kind of really kind of basic kind of level, kind of understanding what it's all about. Then we can come into practice Internet of Things. And again, very similarly, on the right, we've got our educator slides and we've also got our student slides. So I've shown you what those look like for the previous example. In the practice example, well, in all of these examples, we have our curricular links as well. And as I said previously, we've got our links to the benchmarks, as I showed you. So in Scotland, you've got your digital literacy 3rd level, and you've also got 4th level technological developments in society and business links in there as well. So I can download the full curriculum guide. And here you'll see that I was looking at it previously. So where are we? Let's go back up to the top and then we can jump to where we need to go to explore the Internet of Things. And there is just where I got all the E's and O's from today's session. So they're all in here and you can access them all. I then took those and just ran to the benchmarks to find out what our students needed to do. So if I head back to the Internet of Things now, so we've got our curriculum guides. So I've shown you kind of what it looks like for Explore. Let's have a wee look at practice. We've still got time. Yeah, we've got plenty of time. Very similar to the Explore part, we do have our educator slides and our student slides, and you can just kind of work through these with the students as you go. So we get kind of markers for the teachers. So show your students this video on the Farm Beats project. Were they surprised by how Internet of Things has been used in the farming industry? Again, linking into what Andrew was saying about using farming, taking all that data and applying that to kind of gain an advantage in the world. We've got our kind of questions or discussions that we've got for our students. So it actually gives them activities, split the class into groups and ask them to select an issue facing your school or community. So it could be the traffic congestion around the school. Again, I mean, Andrew, I think you've just covered this whole session for me. Traffic congestion around the school. Absolutely, like he's just said, we can look at that and look at the data, look at the footfall within the school. Litter in a local park, a struggling community organization like a library, or even lack of accessibility for people with disabilities to a local facility. So we've got that discussion question and allowing them to kind of tackle that and answer kind of those big questions there. Again, then we can reflect. So adapting for larger scale issues. If you're working with an older model or a more advanced group, as an educator, take the session further by completing the extension task. So we've got an extension task in there for our students. And lastly, very similar to the last one, we've got our supplementary learning again. Okay. I'm just checking, see if we've got any comments coming in. No, we've got a few minutes left though, so I'm going to finish off by lastly going to our apply and then download the certificate. So apply, in this case, we've not got another lesson, but we've got actually another kind of group of lessons for you to take part in. So we've got our Imagine Cup Junior, which is kind of like a competition for all over the world, and it says global competition there, answering it for me, with events and lesson plans that give students the opportunity to design original solutions and help solve social, cultural, and environmental issues. Now, I believe that this is, it kind of takes place at a certain time of the year, so double check that and kind of check out the Imagine Cup Junior. We've got our Explore the Learning paths as well for students to achieve kind of more kind of free learning and kind of support their interest in the Internet of Things. And lastly, we've got our Microsoft certifications. So consider putting your students through them and kind of show them kind of how you can use the Microsoft tools to support with Internet of Things and with their learning. Once your students have completed all of the activities there, we have our certificate. So we can also download it in Welsh, but we're going to download the English certificate here. And I just think this is so cool, and I've done it for other things because I think it's that cool. But you can type your name directly into the PDF and download that. So all you have to do is then Educator is share that out or send them the link to the certificate, get them to type their own name in, put the date in, and there they have evidence of their learning. Or as an educator, you've got evidence of your own CPD that you have taken part in. Talking about that, we have in the chat our let me find the wording for it here. So it's our registration for attendance for today. If you're taking part in all of our sessions, please do pop your name into the register that is in there, and then we will send you a certificate, again linking to kind of your, I mean, you're putting in that the hours, putting in the time to join us on this learning. It's only right that you have the evidence of this learning, and you can use it towards your CPD for the year. So I'm going to come along and check if we've got any questions just now. Let's just stop sharing and pull me back up to the big screen. There we go. Have we had any questions coming in at all? No questions presently. That's absolutely fine. If you do have any questions, please do pop them into the chat. I'll be checking it every day or so. Or you can find us on Twitter each. You can get me at Niall Ridgway or at Tablet Academy SC for Scotland. You've got, you can contact Jenny at Did You Learn Scott? And lastly, we've got Lara. You can get in contact through Microsoft EDU. I hope that you've learned something new. I've had a really fun time on today's session. We're finishing bang on time today, which is quite nice. It's quite good. So thank you very much to everyone for joining us. I hope that you've learned something new and that you've enjoyed discovering the digital futures. I'll see you on our next session. And yeah, I hope that you have a good rest of your week. And I'll see you then. Cheers. Bye.